If you truly love something, set it free. And if it comes back to you, it's meant to be. I remember hearing that a lot back in the day in high school, and everybody having this interesting concept of love. And it is one of those expressions that I think when it comes to love actually does a good job truly encapsulating the essence of love. But people tend to look at love as a form of attachment. And so what I want to do is I want to break down the difference between attachment and love, real love, true love. Now, when I say real love, true love, I use those words to just give you real intense meaning behind the significance of love. But really, we're just talking about love in its purest state, without the real or the true love, as if there are different degrees of love. And there aren't. There is just simply love. And we're going to get into exactly what does that mean. But first, let's go into attachment. Attachment tends to come with caring, with being connected to something and not wanting it to change. And attachment is something that is associated with our ego, right? Our mismanaged ego that is essentially wanting to protect us from feeling pain or feeling hurt. And the ego's job with doing that tends to create a lot of drama and a lot of pain for us, ironically. So we want to break down exactly what the ego does when creating attachment and how exactly that differs from love. Attachment is one of those things that when we are really hung up on it, or we identify with something so much that we inflict mental and spiritual suffering upon ourselves when that thing changes somehow. And it can change mainly by not being a part of our lives anymore, or it can just simply make a shift. But what we tend to do is we tend to get attached. We tend to think that this thing that we are quote unquote thinking we are in love with or we feel love for should stay exactly the same. And there is nothing that stays the same. When we really think about attachment versus love, then we start to break down this concept of, well, let's try to keep this thing the same. And when it doesn't stay the same, when it always changes, then we experience heartache, heartbreak, depression, various low vibration emotions. As you think about all the times in your life when you felt some kind of disappointment or suffering, it always comes down to attachment. It always comes down to having an expectation as to what you wanted to happen and what you thought or felt that was supposed to happen. But when you're in the realm of love, then you're in a space of being in consciousness, right? Your higher self. You're connected with the universe on a different plane, a different level. And so you're not as attached to things because your consciousness knows that all things are you anyway. You are everything. You are one with everything. Whereas the ego, on the other hand, with attachment, doesn't have that sense of identity because the ego creates your individuality. It creates a separation. And so when you are living in your ego or from your ego, then you identify that thing as something separate from you. So when it changes, it's something that you have a hard time coping with. When you have a hard time coping with it, then it creates pain, it creates suffering because you're not identifying with the understanding that you are one with that. So if it changes, then so be it. It's not going to change your relationship or your connection to it, your love for it, right? Now, when you are coming from a place of higher consciousness, as it changes, which you often expect change, you embrace what it is at the moment, and you even look forward to what it's going to be later on, right? From one moment to the next. Because you understand that there is a oneness between you and that thing always. Even if the thing or the person ceases to exist in your life, you still have that memory, you still have that connection, you still have that impact on you, right? That person has impacted you in such a way that even if they are not present anymore for whatever reason, you still have the connection, you still have the memories, you still have the love for that person and that energy and that experience and that relationship. Whereas the person who is driven by ego will have a breakdown because they miss the person so much that they feel like that person and everything that that person created with you is no longer in existence. But it is in existence. You had that experience. The memories are still there. The influence, the impact is still there. You are a different person because of that experience. That is proof of the oneness between you and that thing or that person or that experience. When you're coming from ego, you're going to have a lot of experiences like that. You're going to have a lot of moments of suffering that's based on you separating yourself from something else. But as you evolve throughout your spiritual journey and you become more aware of being in a space of higher consciousness, then you understand that though things are constantly changing, that oneness is a permanent fixture, a permanent part of your existence and your being. And so even though that thing may change, the experience of it and how it impacted you will never change. You see, it will always be a part of your beingness. And so the difference between the two is really a difference in managing your ego and not letting yourself be identified with the separation that the ego creates, but living in a space of higher consciousness where you are acknowledging and being in the oneness that you have with everything. And so when you are truly in love, coming from a place of loving something, think about it. Even think about the expression that I started this with, right? If you love something, you set it free. If it comes back to you, it's meant to be. Setting it free, letting it be free is an expression of love. Also, I say acceptance of the thing, acceptance of the change is also an expression of love. So when you are in love with something, you are allowing it to take whatever form, shape, path that it wants to take, trusting that it will always be a part of you as it impacted your life in a positive, beautiful way. So continue to live in that space, realizing that though the relationship may change in this physical realm, the impact and how significant it is to you and how it has allowed you to grow will never change. And when you are able to encapsulate that, when you're able to own the essence of that, even when the quote unquote relationship changes, your point of view about that relationship and the impact on your life will continue to change in a way that is more profound, right? More engaging, more beautiful and abundant, even though that quote unquote relationship is not existing in the normal sense of relationships or things, right? So be mindful about the difference between what your ego is creating and what your consciousness is creating. Ego is creating attachment because it's separate from you. It's creating a separation. You're identifying with that separation. So when things change, you are upset about the change of that relationship between you and the thing. Whereas higher consciousness, on the other hand, it is understanding the oneness of all things. So even when things change, your connection and your oneness with that thing will never change. Thank you so much. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.